Jerry Gidel is ready to analyze right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we had a very strong corn rally today. Is that related to the grain corridor or the numbers from the USDA report this week?
I kind of feel like that both corn and wheat's kind of reactions today going into the weekend were reflected the lack of positive news coming about the grain corridor being extended. There has been, the UN and Turkey have continued to try to find a hotspot there for Putin as to what would get him excited about extending it. His government, I think, is really looking at the idea that they need to try to starve out Ukraine so they can't sell anything. Then that's going to have less dollars coming back at them in the war effort. But it's a tricky one at this point. The UN did offer out, I think, an interesting idea here. They have previously talked about utilizing other services. Actually, J.P. Morgan's is really where they've been using most of their connections here on Russian sales of grain. But they actually did offer out the original ag bank in Russia's having them able to utilize the SWIFT program, SWIFT payments, I should say, and that which really has been the standard approach for exports out of Russia for years, and so, but that was out in yesterday's news, and nothing happened today, and it might happen this weekend. Right now, at least, though, people were getting nervous that nothing had come out of the Kremlin at this point that positive about extending it, 30 days, another 60 days, or whatever. So I think that's the real issue that probably popped in here on both corn and wheat today. To some extent, there's other implications out of the USDA's recent crop reports for July that are making some people nervous too.
Yes, we saw higher ending stocks for both corn and soybean.
Higher than last year's numbers, relatively speaking. That they did in the soybeans case, they did reduce it down 50 million from 350 down to 300. They when you start putting it all together, they really strained themselves there to come up with some of these numbers. On the soybean side, they took 100 million out of demand, and let's see, and so that compensated for their reduction of 210 million in production. So, but I think that one particularly has caught many people's eyes there, that they left their 52 million average, 52 bushel. We'll get to straighten out too many billions and millions and bushels. They all got bouncing around here from there. So the 52 bushel yield, considering the fact that the current crop ratings are still in the 51% good and excellent, which is one of the lowest we've had in, I'm not sure, it's all the way back to 12. I think it was 13 or 14. We had some similar numbers this time of year. So I think there's some caution there about the fact that the production number could be vulnerable, and to some extent, looking out at the at the soybean ending stocks, not to say that, and I still think there is some vulnerability there. You take one bushel off of the number there, that 300 bushel could be easily quickly down at 80, 220 type bushel estimate. and that's not completely out of the works. We had a number at below 50 last year, so that's something that still is a possibility here at this point. Corn side of the things, yes, we had the increases in the production, the planting numbers by 2.1 million. That really kind of carried the load here on things with the but the other twist of it is that they and to some extent the U.S. export sales and currently have been very, very sluggish, and so they took some usage out of that, so we carried our carryover stock, held it together at 1.4 billion, despite the fact that the stocks numbers that came out here back in June, really, you have to put that particular lost stock position into the feed usage. Now, to some extent, it's not feed usage, and actually the official title for feed is also feed in residual, and that's the twist of it here. That residual came in there. Original statistics kind of suggested about a billion bushel number versus 850 million a year ago during this quarter, which doesn't really match up from the standpoint that we had 2.5 to 3% less steers in the feed yards, and the poultry and pork were only slightly up. But the USDA's numbers that just came out here, looking at their industrial demand and also exports, they kind of shaved that number back down to 988 million but that's still a significant increase over a year ago. And so that the corn number carryover stock at 2.6 number, which really was kind of what the people in the trade were looking for, virtually an unchanged number from their USDA's June level, but it was known, and so that's what broke things on Wednesday on the corn. Beans also, after trying to be higher most of the day, did slide late in the day, but then got fired back up here when people started still staring at the fact that this carryover stock in the U.S. Was still vulnerable to a pretty significant adjustment down from the 300 million the USDA had projected. And even on the corn here, I think there's still a lot of people questioning the USDA's 177.5 bushel yield. The trade was averaged at 1 bushel down. And I think there was also a lot of people at 176 or lower. And so that's going to tighten up this USDA's 2.2 billion number. Right now, at least, though, the prospects of being down at 1.5 or 1.4 billion bushels like this year, that's probably going to be real tough unless this weather situation that we talked about for next week continues on into late July and on into August here, and really significantly impacts the northern and western areas of the U.S. Corn Belt. Right now, there's not much in the forecast for that region there, northern Iowa, Dakotas, Minnesota, and that, and they haven't really received the rains that other areas have. Illinois, Indiana, 2/3 or so of Iowa, Missouri, parts of Nebraska. So that's really the heart of the Midwest, and there's still some other issues out here. Kansas is not looking very good on yields either, potentially because of the heats out there. Texas is broiling at this point. So right now, at least, there's lots of still uncertainty going on here in the U.S. Summer weather.
Now, you mentioned sluggish exports. What is necessary to get the exports back? The weaker dollar, just more time, or what?
Well, the weaker dollar is a factor because it has been kind of regrouping and coming back here recently. The other twist is that one of our major buyers around the world, of course, is China, and I think China has been well. I think there've been basically anti-U.S. purchases in that. I heard even recently before this USDA report, they went out and bought some new crop, or what I consider new crop, in essence, our time span of August through October, soybeans. I'm not sure exactly. The Brazilians at this point sold them a lot of beans already. And normally they ship their stuff down and then they look to the U.S. on beans. On the corn side, there's definitely some indications going on here that the weather in northeast part of China, where their major corn production is, down to Hunan, which is just south of Beijing, has been under some real stress here from heat and dryness. So I think there's going to be some potential, because the one thing about it is that Argentina's crop this year is definitely out of the commission. Now I know that Brazil is more than happy to send as much as they can to China, and but I also sense that the capacity at this point to get everything to China is still there. I think there's going to be, but potentially some positive news in that. It's still going to make it. This year's crop is not as there's not going to all of a sudden take our carryover stock on the old crop down dramatically here from the 1.4 billion the USDA is looking for. But I kind of feel like that some of these late season situations could pick up slightly at this point, and really going to zero into that new crop on demand out there, because the USDA did leave their corn demand for exports unchanged in this recent update this week.
And what are you expecting for next week?
Well, of course, the weather's going to still be a factor, as I mentioned, and also what's the final situation going on there in the Black Sea corridor. Right now, if I think that the world will get even more nervous if there is no extension, even if they give them a 30 or 60 days, they're going to be it's still going to be cautious that that's just a temporary thing. But if it doesn't happen, I think that's a factor in here that I know that the Ukrainians are optimistic about being able to get shipments out through the EU, which they're supposedly going to have that alternative coming to them in September and afterwards, and at the same time getting things out through the Danube and Romania and that. But I really think that that really would get people's attention here, that it's really dependent upon the U.S., Brazil, and one thing interesting too we didn't mention here is that heat's also been impacting Europe, and there's been indications that some of their crop sizes are going to go lower, and also impacting some late wheat. The wheat market here is seasonally usually has some enthusiasm here post harvest on U.S. wheat harvest, but we're still struggling to get this wheat harvested in Kansas, and so we're not really into the post-harvest mentality. But I kind of feel like that things could change if this Ukrainian situation in the Black Sea corridor does not continue to function. And the twist of it right now is that there's the Russians basically stopped letting boats go in. So even if they did open up the prospects of the corridor continuing, we'd have to get a whole bunch of boats back in there. It took us 2 2 to 3, 4 weeks before we really got much going after last year when they officially announced it was going to open. And everybody had to figure out for sure if it was for real or not. And I think that's the same thing's going to happen now. It's going to be a really choppy situation on what could happen from coming out of that out of the Black Sea grain corridor at this point, because there's not much movement going on in there now, and it'd take another, as I said, 3 to 5 weeks just to get things rolling again, and then get back out of there. So I don't know, that kind of a lost cause in my mind that it's really going to function anywhere close to what it did, basically from September through May of this year. So that's a biggie, and weather's the factor, and I kind of feel like this market's going to keep a very cautious eye here about how the prices are at. Could be continue that effect. If we get up to an action here on December corn above $7 or above $5.20, it could get a little bounce on it. The beans are right here below $15 on them, and if that takes that number out, we could have you could have a pretty snappy market in that one too. It's things are right now very, very cautious and very nervous about what's ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Jerry.
You have a great weekend, and we look forward to doing our annual crop tour here in 2 or 3 weeks. So looking forward to see you in person.